Okay, welcome guys to the Good Podcast. I am Rob Watson, and in today's episode, I'm speaking with Dave Linton, who is the founder of Madlug, which stands for Make a Difference Luggage, which is an award-winning bag brand helping to give dignity to children in care. Started back in 2015 after he was heartbroken to hear that most children in care transport their worldly belongings in just a bin bag. He set out to do something about it. And with just a few quid in his pocket, he started Madlug, and he came up with this idea of buy one, give one approach. So with every bag that is purchased, one will also be given to a child in care, which sounds like an amazing organization. So firstly, Dave, thank you for speaking with me today.
It's great to be on your podcast, Rob.
So yeah, I gave a little bit brief overview, but if you could just go into some more detail, tell us a little bit more about how it started and how it's unfolded, that would be great.
Yes, Rob. So 90,000 children in the care system across the UK and Ireland, one moving every 15 minutes, and most of their belongings in black plastic bin bags. And I first came across that story whenever back in 2015, whenever my wife and I had been on a course looking at going back into foster, and we already are adoptive parents, and we had done some short break foster care. However, we had taken a little break from that, and as part of it, we had to go back to the very start and learn how to do fostering. And they showed a story of a young girl, and she was in a wheelchair, a teenager, and she made this statement: "When we move, the local trusts or local authorities don't give us suitcases. Sometimes foster carers loan us suitcases, but quite often our belongings are moved in black plastic bin bags." And I have to be honest, I heard absolutely nothing else for the rest of that evening and felt I'm going to do something to fix that. So my initial thought was, at that time I was a youth worker. I'd spent most of my working life as a youth worker, love young people, believe in young people. And so I could go back to the youth centre that I was running and get the young people to donate their last year school bags and sports bags and so forth, and we just give them to local trust, because we're based in Northern Ireland's local trust. And but the more I researched it, I felt, one is the numbers: 90,000 children, one move in every 15 minutes. Yes, we could be a little, it would help in our area, but it wouldn't look at the whole issue. And secondly was these children, the incredible children in the care system who have huge value, the fact that they breathe, they have huge worth and deserve to be treated with dignity. And dignity is about giving them a brand new bag, giving them something that's not secondhand or hand me down, but how do we get give them a brand new bag? So it led me on to, okay, that model isn't going to work to get this problem solved. So how do I get new bags? And after a bit of exploring of the charity world, thinking, do I get funding and get fundraisers going? I started to look more into the social economy or social enterprise space, where I could generate funding through selling product that helps tell the story and enable us to give bags. And that's where Madlug kind of came from.
It's amazing. It's an incredible story, and I like the way it started. From it wasn't like you suddenly thought, "Oh, I'm going to set up this company to do these bags." It was like, actually, how can I make a difference straight away? And it was starting small, and you probably never even thought of what it's going to turn into. But I think, like all good ideas and all great things, they start with something like a small action or a small need and a desire to make some change. And I've got to admit, when I was reading up on you before I did the podcast, before we started this interview, and I must admit, like it was breaking my heart just actually like seeing it, like children, like you say, just the fact that there's 90,000 of them in care, and I don't know how often they're getting moved about, and some of them could be in multiple places each year, or, through so many different things in the like such young um, in the such early childhood. Like I think I've recently become a father, and the thought, like she's the most precious thing to me in the world, and the thought that these child, and I think there was something on the site. I think that's what really got me. Over half of the victims are like the victims of neglect or abuse, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just like, it really. It's such a big issue, and I know we can all get quite insular on our lives, can't we? The way it is, and just be focused on what we need to do to improve our lives. But there's so much going on, and to see that you're making a difference, and it's lovely to hear that you've been a social worker, you've adopting kids, looking to foster children. Like for me, you're like a hero, ultimate kind of do-gooder in a way. Like, and it's just inspiring to hear, like what you're doing, and and how it's kind of evolved. So besides like just giving, besides giving them bags, what else do you think that, needs to be done or can be done to, I know you're doing a great thing, because what it says on every one of the labels is like, you are incredible, to help remind the kids that they actually have value, worth, and dignity, which is amazing. That they might not be hearing that language much, especially growing up, if they've been abused or neglected. So that's like a really good positive reinforcement. But how further do you think it goes? And
Well, I think when I started, it was as simple as, how do I get bags to these incredible children? And the the that was where it really started. And you go back on some of the comments that you pointed out there, is that I think how we do, where we come from, is often our own backstories, and what drives us. So I wasn't a social worker; I was a youth worker, running youth centers, but why was I 42 and starting a business rather than 25 and starting a business? And why was I in youth work for 22 years? What drove me to that? What has drove me to do what I do now? And I think it looks back at my backstory. When I was 5, I lost my dad. My mum was a widow. She worked hard to bring us up, but significant people helped her. Neighbors next door, looked after us to enable her to work. At times, they opened their doors after school. When we needed food, there was enough. We were able to go next door and get some milk and stuff. And so I have a lot of what I call, non-blood aunts and uncles in my life, and people who, that backstory, I think, has shaped who I am as a person, in the sense of I was in some ways vulnerable myself, but not on the edge of care, not in the care system, because my mum did an incredible job and had the support around of family and friends and neighbors. But also is that has given me such a drive that I am for the underdog, and the one who often feels unseen. I was that kid who walked around, felt like I was different, because everybody else had dads, everybody else was at the football matches, and everybody else was on the tennis courts with their dads, and I had nobody to play with in those kind of contexts. Now, as an adult, I know the realities is that a lot of people don't have those experiences with dads, even when they're present or when they're in person. But at that time, that's how I felt, and you felt vulnerable. So that has been a huge drive in I've always wanted to be a helper, and I've always wanted to be a champion of the underdog. So when I was a youth worker, I sat in my favorite times was sitting playing FIFA with the young people who mostly got kicked out of other clubs, who were the ones that most other leaders were maybe not given a lot of time to, because every time they give time, they were fighting with them to get them out, or to behave or do that. And I was the one that was wanting to get to know them, sit down and chat. I hated all the fundraising of youth work and applications and stuff, because part of the thing is I'm dyslexic in that, so that was never my strength. But I love that underdog, and that has led me into what I do. So when we got married, my wife and I, it wasn't that if we can't have children, let's adopt. It was, we're going to adopt whether we have children or not, and we have a birth child and we have an adopted daughter, which is amazing, and they're brilliant, and I love them to bits. So that's always been part of my DNA. So it's out of that backstory comes this story now. But the size of the problem was huge, and I just felt I needed to do something, and that drives me to do what I do now.
And I understand, like you've, 45,000 donations, bags that have been made so far.
Yeah, that'll be close to 50 at the end of summer. In 1 week we had 17,500 bags given just recently.
Wow.
Now, obviously, the model is, we have to sell bags. We've got to get the cash. We've got to then get the numbers so we can order enough of the bags and all of the logistics of that and the time scale. So we generally can give large amounts at certain times, because, obviously we want to get them out once we have them as fast as we can. But we're now, I think, touching on 50, and I think there's funding in place for another 3,000 or 4,000. So
it's amazing. And how was that kind of built? I assume that's just building momentum. I assume it started small in the hundreds to start off with, and then it's just kind of like a bit of a bell curve.
absolutely. So I say I started with £500. You know, I remember having the idea after that meeting and being heartbroken and looking at all the ideas. And my wife's in the charity space as well, and none of us are business, orientated, and probably looked a little bit differently at business leaders, thinking, those people have got all together, they've loads of wealth, and and they can, and we're not that, and and that's not our world. And I remember coming to my wife going, I have this idea to fix that problem. Now, the interesting thing is my wife didn't hear the story. She was at the same meeting and didn't hear the same problem. So it didn't resonate in the same way as it resonated with me, which in some ways I think, this is what I've been given to champion, and she's been so supportive in that and gets it. But I remember saying, I have this idea, and she looked at me and she says, Dave, we have no money, because as a youth worker we had enough to pay our bills but never any savings. And I said, well, what I need you to do is I need you to commit to supporting the idea and be open to the potential of having income from 3 or 4 different sources. So I was needing to leave a steady income from one employer with the expectations of that, and take a little bit of control onto multiple income streams to cover our livelihood. And that's what I did, and she supported me in that. And we had, between two of my mum and her family, we raised £500 to start it. And we haven't had any investment. Well, to say we haven't had any investment, we've had some small social enterprise grant money to buy their equipment or to go towards allowing me to work a little bit more time in the business. And recently I've had a 3-year support from a foundation to support me in leading the work. But most of it has been done through sales and generating and the bell curve. So for instance, you said about the bell curve, we were looking at our 3rd birthday Instagram post, big 3 cake, and we were celebrating having given 3,000 bags to children, and we were like, this is amazing, wow, and we got our 6th birthday there in June, and we're at 45,000.
Amazing.
So that's been and I'm really proud of that, because we've had COVID in the midst of that, and we chose, if we were going to have value worth dignity, we weren't going to furlough any of our staff. So we really took a decision to honor our staff in the same way as we're honoring the kids who we're trying to reach and work with, and we came out of it having the 45,000 bags at the end of.
Amazing. I think what's so inspiring elements of that, all of it is, but particularly that bit of starting small, starting with £500, because a lot of people might see businesses, and even your company might look at it and go, oh, well, that must have had some angel investors come on board with 50,000 at the beginning, or other companies, and it can feel disempowering to some people, thinking, well, I can't do that. Where am I going to get the money from? I've not got this. But to know that the key is to have an idea, to have a mission, to think, what's the purpose behind it, and kind of doing it rather than thinking 5 years ahead or whatever. He's like, well, what can I do now in the immediate term? Okay, have a vision. This is where I'd like to go, but what can you do to start off with? And I love the bit as well that you're saying, because you took a risk as well. You took a big risk. You were in permanent employment. You said it wasn't a huge income, it kind of got used by. So you're taking a significant risk, but you were kind of taking that risk and that chance of that leap into the unknown in something that you believed in, and thinking, okay, well, we're gonna have to make it work. And it's almost like spinning plates a little bit, isn't it? Because you're gonna have to do this over here, bring this in here to balance everything. So you said that you had to get multiple bits of income in. What's interesting for me is that understand was that a process, and now basically you're permanent now with Madlug, or are you still kind of doing that?
So for the last 3 years, I've been employed, salaried through Madlug. So Madlug, I don't own. It's a community interest company. So I set it up intentionally with that, because I never wanted to have the tension of, even if, Madlug, say I move on from Madlug, or I never wanted to get the perception of wealth from doing good. And the UK, Northern Ireland's even, I think, a little bit behind in this, is very different than the American model. We look at America a lot of time and go, well, Tom shoes and all of these things. But philanthropy and wealth are both celebrated together in the States. In Northern Ireland, we're really good with underdog and terrible with success. And I just knew that I would be putting the mission at risk if, you know, down the line, people assumed, oh, they've changed house or they've changed their car and stuff. So I was more comfortable in getting a board, making a CIC, locked asset, getting a fundry board of quality people around me who determine what I get paid. And so for the last 3 years, I've had a salary to lead this, as with in comparison to the rest of the team. And but up until that, it was, you know, a little bit of income from Unlimited, and you know, I did some social enterprise consultancy work, and you know, and was able to get well paid for that. I didn't have to work a lot of hours in that, 9 to 5. They allowed me, but all that's gone because my reason for doing that was to focus in Madlug, and now that I've got the ability to focus 100%, and I'm one of them creatives that I have loads of ideas, but I need to be working on one thing and focused on one thing, or I end up doing no thing, and that's part of the thing. The thing about is starting small. You know, when you're forced to start small in business, there's two things that I've learned, and I advise people now when I'm speaking is find your black bin bag story, the story within the bigger story, because that gives you your narrow focus and gives you a role to play and where you fit in the playing of doing good. Rather, because in the doing good space, there's a lot of competition, and everybody feels threatened because they're all competing for the same funding, the same customer base. So we've learned that the black bin bag for us, literal black bin bag, is our space within the bigger care space that we, yes, we have influence, but actually that's what we get up every day. That's what we focus our products on. That's what we focus our storytelling on, or is around that black bin bag. The other part is when you have an idea, then the vision piece is important, but the risk of vision, and you come across this at every stage. So that I have this every day as well. When Madlug can afford a little bit more, the vision, you know, always gets bigger and more fine. But for visionary, it's always in the distance, and most visionaries try to start where the vision ends. So the £500 forced me to make better decisions because I didn't have the investor. But if I had had the investment, I probably wouldn't be here today, because I'd have gone to wrong warehousing. I'd have had too many staff. I wouldn't have had the product thought out, and I'd been left with a whole load of stock and not the cash flow to keep the thing going. And because you see the end rather than the beginning. So the finances forced me to make the right calls to create a lean business model that allowed me to grow the impact and to test it and to take the risks. And so that's the kind of size, the risk taking then, and Dave, you know, leaving the job and stuff. I was 42, 22 years in youth work. I was in that kind of tension space that I went into youth work as a non-qualified youth worker. I'd never had the time to go and qualify. The world of youth work was becoming more qualification based and more professionalized. And I was in that place where, okay, I'm looking at what's next. What's the next 15 years of my life going to be? And I was to either change profession, do I go and study and do a professional youth work degree? Do I have the capacity for that? I'm dyslexic. I'm not an academic in the slightest. So all those kind of, it wasn't just like this hero, I'm going to give us up. It was at a pivot point in my life when I saw the black bin bag. It broke my heart. I needed to do something about it. And then the risk of it was, well, if I give up the job to go and study, that's going to cost me as well. If I go into a whole new career, I'm going to have to drop a few because I don't have the qualification and leadership of the level I'm operating in. And those were the kind of stuff that was going around. So I hate to think people think it's a hero thing. It came at a time when there was probably some thought processes there of I needed a change, different route. I didn't go looking for the bags to be the change. That broke my heart at the time, but it made the going after that easier. You know, at a 42 year old guy, rather than it's I think it's easier to do that stuff in your 20s because you can take risks and you're trying to find your way. But for me, it was more of, this was a season in my life. How do I get the next 15, 20 years to do something that's significant to help people at the stage of where I'm at, and without training and so forth.
Amazing to hear. And it must feel good then, doing what you're doing. It must feel nice getting up each morning knowing that, well, you're creating something that is helping someone else. It's being of service to others.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's there's nothing better than seeing the impact of what you do. And we're often you know, what people say to me about social business is, oh, this is great and I'd love to do what you do. And they, you know, but what they don't realize about social business is you're starting two things at once. You're starting a profit making business, which in itself is challenging, and you're starting a charity impacting part to what you do. And you've got to build relationships in both of those, and so forth. So we tend to be business first, generate the funds, and then have partners that we give through. So we never really get the end impact of the actual young person. We don't know the young people. We give them through those partners, obviously because of the size and the volume. But at times we get to meet people who we've been able to work with. For instance, I'll tell you a story. About in 2018, I was at a youth festival in Northern Ireland, about 1,500 young people. And there was a youth worker there. These young people, the youth workers bring their young people to this. It's camping and there's music and so forth. And I was, we had been selling at this event for maybe 2 or 3 years. And we started to notice this particular year, there was lots of Madlug bags being worn. So out of the 1,500, we counted 300 young people who were carrying Madlugs. So it was quite impressive to see young people carrying and making a difference. But a youth worker came to me at the stand and says, I'm just buying a bag for my wife to take home to her. She loves Madlug. We love Madlug. And by the way, we have in our group a guy who is in foster care. And at that stage, I said, well, normally we give the bags to the children. They're co-branded, or not co-branded. They're unbranded, co-designed by young people in care to meet the issue of the bin bag. So it's not just about giving a bag; it's about how do we solve the problem of where's bin bags used? How do we prevent that being used? So it's a little fold away bag that falls into a gym bag size. And one of the things the young people told us at that time was, we don't want to have a brand on it because we don't want to be stigmatized. But I knew at this event, this foster young person wouldn't be stigmatized carrying a Madlug backpack. He would have blended in. It was joining the movement, no different. Yeah. And I said, why don't you get this guy to come down to our stand? He doesn't have to introduce himself to me. He just has to look at the backpacks, go back to you and choose a color that he would like, and I'll give it to you for him. So I don't even have to put him in an awkward place. I'm not looking anything in return. I want him to feel good, and just there's a gift for him. Well, the last day we were packing up, this youth worker arrives down, introduces me to this guy called Jay. And I said, Jay, nice to meet you. What color bag would you like? And he said, I am colorblind. I says, what football team do you support? And he says, his football team, and he chose a red bag. So I go over, hand him the red bag. He stand red bag, and I said, Jay, tell me your story. And he said, I'm 17 and a half. I've been in care for 10 years. And he says, within that 10 years, I remember in a 2-week period, having moved 15 times with my belongings in bin bags. What you do, Dave, is amazing. Like, it really is amazing. And he kept saying that. At that stage, I looked outside the marquee of where we were selling from, and I could see lots of young people just in the distance. And this, I don't know if you've ever been in this place, but for me, it was like goosebumps and emotion started to go. As like, you know, I spent 3 years not getting paid to do this, just building something, putting sweat and blood, sacrificing things to do it. And I turned around, tears were in my eyes, and I started and I said, like, I'm so sorry, I could hardly get it out. And when I got it out, I said, Jay, what's truly amazing is there's over 300 young people who are part of this festival who are here, who have chosen to buy Madlug bags over other bags that they could buy like Nike and Kanken and all of the other brands. Why? Because they believe that you are incredible. And he smiled and he went off. And at the end of the day, he came back, and I was literally packing the stand down at this stage. And he says, I had to come back. And I remember him having a girl beside him, and she just was glowing. Like the best way of describing it is I don't even know her name. Just remember she had frizzy hair, half his height, just glowing. It was very obvious that he had told the story. And he says, I'm going back to see Dave. He comes back and he flung his arms around me. He says, I had to come back just to say thank you. Well, that's not the end of the story, Rob. 2 days after that event, I get a Facebook message. And the Facebook message was this: I met Dave Linton at this festival. And I'm so impressed and so amazed at the work you do that I've decided I'm going to be 18 soon. And for my 18th birthday, I'm going to give all the money that I get to the work of Madlug so that other young people can experience what I experienced. Something totally changed for me. You know, I started this wee thing of just getting bags, and, you know, that's a nice thing to do, and we're solving the bin bag issue. Something changed of the impact of creating a movement of people across the world that in cities and towns, villages, people were communicating a message of, we believe in you, we see you, we love you, we care for you. And this non-verbal communication of care, this love without words in carrying the bag, never mind the actual bag that's going. And that story for me is saying, have I had any more contact with Jay? Every so often I reach out to him and check in with him and Facebook. And I visited their youth center, of which he came. Now Jay's 21 now, and I visited the youth center to talk to one of the youth workers, and wasn't expecting Jay to be there just a couple of weeks ago. And I got the opportunity because the youth worker says, we haven't seen Jay in a year and a half, but for some reason he's back today. Didn't know I was coming. And we got to reconnect again, and it was just amazing. You know, the conversation, the impact. And he says, I still have that backpack. And he says, you know what I didn't tell you? I had been given one of the little pack away bags, didn't know it was Madlug when I was moving. So I already had one, and that was for me. We don't need to get the praise or the celebration of this. Our bags are getting out to the end user and to the kids who need them. And there's a child, he moved 15 times with his belongings in bin bags, but one time was prevented because he had a little red pack away bag. And that for me is the stuff that gets me up every day. You know, I keep, you know, hearing those stories, and you get letters from young people, 2-page, you know, letters, and you always get them at times when you feel like I could give up. You know, I'm exhausted with this. Is this really making a difference? And you go into the office, or you go to your meal in the house and you get that letter, or you meet the Jays in the world. So yeah, so that's the stuff that fuels you.
I'm literally blown away listening to that, Dave. And you can't put a price on that. You know, you see people. You talked about the element of money before. You know, people can go and work in the city and earn hundreds of thousands, millions. You know, but it's soulless. You know, and it's just to like crunch numbers or move stuff about. And you know what you're talking about, those stories. You know, and that's just one story of Jay, but there'll be thousands of other ones as well that you won't be hearing, but obviously say you'll get letters which give you the boost, and that just feels, you know, like I'm getting super inspired as well. I've got, you know, some ideas and stuff, and I'm probably a bit like, you know, I have too many ideas. I need to just focus my mind on one and stuff. But it's just it's wonderful to hear that, and just to know that, like, you know, that what you're doing each morning, if people can be hearing that and thinking, and there's so many people, we've seen it through COVID the past year, you know, that talk about key workers, you know, people who are generally underpaid, not very well respected generally from, you know, what society perceives as success, but actually that's the greatest success. And it's interesting, like, about the volunteer sector. I believe like the generally low paid people are more willing to do volunteer work, where you would think it might be people who had more money and more time might volunteer, but actually it comes from that, you know, you're saying that underdog mentality, and they've been through that experience, they're willing to care. And that's something that frustrates me a little bit with politics. And when you look at the politicians that we've got, you know, I don't really see any people like yourself, Dave, or other ones who were the, you know, they seem to be the people that can make better decisions rather than people who have, you know, have all gone to Oxford or Cambridge and, you know, and have come from a lot of privilege. And you feel like, how can they be making decisions for people in Northern Ireland or up in, you know, up in Newcastle or Liverpool or Manchester? That's me going off on a little bit of a tangent there. But back onto the bag itself, I understand as well what sounds really amazing. You might be able to correct these figures, but I understand that like a significant amount of them also get manufactured in Belfast by people who've got disabilities.
Yeah, so that's maybe a little bit out of date, that information. In 2018, for about a year, we brought production to Belfast, and but we've outgrown capacity of that. So we got about a year, and then we couldn't sustain the capacity of that. So we ended up with no option but to go back to our original manufacturing process to scale it. The challenge that we have, Rob, is this. In a social business is the problem we are fixing is a volume problem. So it's a large number problem. And we are trying to get more bags to children. So that means for us, we have to have a price point on the bag that we sell to be one that we can sell many, rather than a niche product that we sell less. Because, okay, we can give a bag, but that's not going to give the same volume of impact in what's needed. You know, if you take one child moving every 15 minutes, that's equates to about 40,000 children, you know, just enter care every year at risk of a bin bag or a plastic shopping bag these days. So that's what we're trying to say is, how do we get to that 40,000, not just in 6 years, but every year? And then if you think of the global situation, this is not just a UK problem. It's America, it's every 3 minutes or something like that a child enters the care system, and there's 500,000 children. So, you know, we might not be the solution over there, but we want to still be. We have an ability to communicate the importance of the bin bags. No child should carry life in a bin bag through our brand. So that's where we've been. We have recently. And we don't talk about this because we try to stay focused on our mission as our black bin bag, not, you know, other things. You know, it's not look at us, look at all the good things we're doing. We try to make the right thing, to do the right thing in the decisions that fixes our social problem we're trying to fix. And so recently we had 18,000 bags come in from China to give just at the start of summer. But we made a decision that we came across a little community in Nepal of single moms and widows, and a little community group that was working there. And the wife of the leader of this group was a seamstress, and they were doing little sewing projects. So what we've worked with them is we chose to give 500 of our giving bags that we give the kids. We've committed to 500 of those being made every month in Nepal. We pay more for that. The shipping costs, the logistic costs are higher for that, but we're sustaining 7 or 8 women out in this little village. And we don't see that necessarily increasing. We don't see that as becoming a whole, because they wouldn't have the capacity for that. But for us doing taking a part of our spend and moving it to sustain a little community in Nepal, we've chosen to do that. So we try to make that. Now, we don't tell people that story, and the reason being is that confuses, because that's not our mission, to help a community in Nepal and to have, that's not what we're set up to do. We're set up to communicate every child who cares incredible. We're going to ensure that they make it away with dignity by giving them proper bags, and advocate that no child should carry their life in a bin bag.
I think as well, taken from what you're saying there, is like the traditional business model is set up to, it's profit driven, where if you weren't an social enterprise company and you didn't have the ethos and the values that you have in place, someone would just look at that on a piece of paper and look at the figures and go, no, we're going to go to the cheapest place. That means because we're going to increase our bottom line. But I'm seeing more and more, particularly other people that I speak to on this podcast, people are no longer like this drive for profit, this drive for more, this drive for whatever. People are realizing that it's, you know, it doesn't bring fulfillment, it doesn't build, it doesn't have a lasting impact on it. And what does is, you know, knowing that you can make a difference. And, you know, when it comes to that final day on earth, when we know we're about to depart, it's like, what difference have I made? You know, you could have all the money in the bank, but once you've left the earth, it's not yours anymore. You know, what, you know, you might leave it to your friends and family or whoever, but then what are they going to flit it away on? A new car, holidays, you know? But if you can actually think about all the things you make a difference, and it doesn't even have to be, even people listening to this, who might even think they want to set up a company or do something like this. It's just those small random acts of kindness that you can do each day. Even just being kind doesn't have to cost you a penny. You know, it's just doing that, you know, can make you, one, feel better. You're helping someone else. It's just, for me, it's like, I talk about a lot in this podcast. How can we be service to others rather service to self? But by being service to others, you're serving yourself as well. It constantly feeds itself. And I think the more of us that can tune into that kind of mindset and then realize the feeling it can give you, like you spoke about it before when you were speaking about Jay, and you had all that emotion coming up and rushing inside of you. You know, like that is that's just, you know, like I said, it's priceless. But it's great to hear that, you know, you're making an impact in Nepal. It's that kind of butterfly effect, I think, of stuff. And yours is like on a lot larger scale than what maybe, you know, many people might be doing. But
Yeah, I say it's the the thing for me is, one, profit isn't wrong. It's what you do with the profit. So if the profit is about helping people or helping environments, the thing that you're passionate about, then there's absolutely nothing wrong to think of bottom lines. But if your mission is about people, your bottom line isn't going to do it at the cost of people. So for me, that's the difference. So every day I run business, we have to run business well. We have to, you know, we were talking before the podcast about the quality and the looks of the bags and stuff. If we don't have a sustainable business model, we have that feel good factor of doing something significant for a period, but it's not going to solve the long-term problem. So we want to be around for the long term. That means repeat customers. Means quality products, because, you know, people will buy a product once and help your cause, but they'll not buy it a second time if it's not good. People who don't know the story first will find the story out because they've seen a great product on somebody, and then they find the story out when they receive or when they enter the website. So we've got to do that profit. But the key for me is, and I would really encourage, everyone needs to find their black bin bag story, and it's then the response to that black bin bag story. So if somebody is walking around a city and being heartbroken by homelessness, it's not just to say, I want to fix homelessness. It's finding out the part that breaks your heart in that. So for instance, are people ignoring them? Well, that's breaking my heart. So how do I get people to engage them? Because that's your black bin bag story within the story. And then it's then looking and understanding that self-awareness piece as, so what do you bring? How do you fix? So I've always been a pioneer in entrepreneurial in how I've done youth work and how I do organization. And for me, it was then the natural thing was, I'm going to create and ask people to follow. But if I hadn't been that type, that encounter of the black bin bag story would have been, okay, who's working with children in care and how can I get involved in helping? So I find a leader, I find an entrepreneur, I find an existing charity or business, or I find a local community group that's not even doing any business or any big funding things, but is basically going around picking litter or doing something like that. And I get involved and I bring who I am to the table, because that's the sweet spot. When you bring what you are create, how you're shaped into the thing of the role with the thing that breaks your heart in the black bin bag story, that's when you get up every day and the thing that sustains you. So that for me is, I would encourage people not to see profit as a bad thing, but it's how they use their profit. In some ways, it's you know, it's a healthy social capitalism, and that might be a swear word to some of your listeners, but you know, it's that way of, if it's done right, it's using the profits so that employment is created, impact is given, taxes are paid, all of that stuff. So the vulnerable, the disadvantaged, the lesser, the underdogs are supported because of the success, and the business is running well and proper. And that's what I'm really committed to.
Yeah, I can see it comes shining through. And then just touching on the design, because like I mentioned, yeah, before it, they are beautiful looking bags. You know, like you say, you're going to be competing with the Nikes, with, you know, all these other companies for the looks, but obviously you've got the story, but the design has to almost be equal to them. So in terms of the design, you know, how's that kind of evolved for you? Because obviously you didn't know anything. Well, you didn't come into design, you weren't working in design, you weren't in manufacturing. How did that kind of come about?
Yeah. So the fact that we are in bags was the sign of, how do I tell the story of the bags? And it was, you know, influenced by Tom's Shoes, you know, helping children. Now they've moved away from this, but initially it was setting a shoe company up to help kids with shoes. And so I was influenced. I wonder, could I do this with bags? So that's where the bag thing. I really like bags myself. I was always you know, somebody who would have walked around saying and looked at backpacks and interested in it. But so that's where it came from. The design came out of the £500, and it was simply this: when you don't have the money to go and sit down with a whole pile of patterns. So at the time, 2015, let's go back, most of the backpacks that were in the market space were Roxy and maybe Superdry, mainly Roxy bags, and that were patterns all over them. And school kids were using a lot of these for school. That was the thing, and plain bags weren't really the in thing at that particular time. Herschel was coming into the market a lot with the plain bags, and Eastpak had started, but it was mainly, and I was faced with, you know, and they're too plain, but I couldn't afford the risk of going and getting, you know, 1,000 bags of each pattern made, and then somebody like that pattern, but not that pattern. And I also didn't want to be a discount brand and devalue the brand and product. I wanted to be a fair brand, that we got a price point that we try and hold that's fair to everybody. And so it came out at 500. And then my answer to that was, we've got to get really creative in our logo, and we've got to stay classic, and our innovation's got to be our story. So we've spent our time being really innovative in how we tell our story: clear, simple, on track. And that's the USP of what we do, Black Bin Bag Story. We've got to have quality bags. So the way that I could source bags without huge investment in capital was I was able to stay classic design, bags that Adidas, Nike, Eastpak, that style of a bag. And then what I learned from the industry was that it was easier to source, because every company, even the big brands, are using the same manufacturers, same factories, only putting their logos on them. So I needed to find something, that a company to work with, that was ethical, and that there was no child labor, there was fair wages being paid, affordable, quality, that allowed the price point. And I found that, and allowed me to bring in smaller quantities. And we actually have the bags made for us, and we finish them locally to minimize the risk. So that came out of the £500. So it creates employment here locally, because if I bring in a extreme bright color, it's a risk. And if I put my logo as they come in and all the finishing touches in that, it's a risk, because the only way I'm going to move that is to discount it. So it's automatically devalued your brand. So what I do is I create employment, I bring them into spec, we finish them off to Madlug. If a corporate comes along, like IKEA or Shopify or some of the partners that we've worked with, we can then have a little bit of flexibility to work and get the best product for them. in the finishing process. But the other thing is, and we haven't had to do this yet, but it was the reason for doing it, is that we can stick on classic bags that have no representative to a Madlug on a platform like eBay and sell them as blank bags.
You were covering all your bases there with that one.
Covering all business, and it keeps our business lean.
Yeah.
And it allows us to have a size of business that meets demand and needs, and a culture that doesn't want to buy the same color. You know, they want the same brand, but they don't want to have the same color at the party. There's, you know, a wee bit of like my wife would talk a lot about some high streets where, you know, they're nearly afraid to buy because, you know, you go to a wedding and you see 10 people in the same dress. And, you know, so we like a little bit of individualism. So we've been able to give choice, keep the business lean, and be able to grow it in a capacity by using a classic bag model, innovation story, and making sure the bags are quality and ethical.
And you, by going down that classic route as well, you just make it timeless. So you give yourself longevity as well.
Absolutely.
Rather than feeling like a lot of stuff's so trendy now, and you know, it's in for a season or it's in for a year or two and then it's gone. And you don't want to put yourself in that thing. Just to mention, you mentioned IKEA, and I was reading on your blog about how, was it last Christmas that they did something where, you can just tell the story, but I heard about the partnership with IKEA.
So last August, we got a call from IKEA saying that every year they give an end of year gift to every staff member in the UK and Ireland, and they were in a year of sustainability, and had sent out 3 of their team to research social businesses, and all 3 came back wanting Madlug as their number 1. And the question was, could you supply and by a time 12,000, initially it was 12,000 bags. So we were then like, okay, yes, we'd never done an order of that size. You know, we suddenly moved from this business of just e-commerce and retail into sitting having contractual stuff and all of the growth pains of and taking risks in many ways if things weren't delivered in time. You know, there would be penalties and all of that stuff. So we basically did that, and they bought 12,800 bags, and every staff member got one for Christmas. The strength of that was they made a video, a little animation video, because normally they do the giving of their gifts in person, but with COVID they couldn't. So they commissioned an animation company to put a really strong animation together, and they told the Madlug story to all of those people. And the feedback has been phenomenal in that, you know, they're saying best gift ever. You know, normally a lot of their product would end up back on eBay, you know, so it'd be like a little Google Home or something like that. It would end up on eBay, and they were aware of that. I think in the total we have seen 10 bags on eBay as a result of the IKEA job, which is phenomenal out of 12,500. And that has been brilliant. But what it did also for the organization was they talked about some of their staff having never shared their story that they were care experienced. So it suddenly gave a sense of, wow, I work for a company that cares. Or, you know, it became more kind of connected and more personal. So it was just an amazing partnership and opportunity. And for us, we grew a lot and we learned huge amounts in how to do business. And we've had some of those tensions of the £500. We have to keep still focused because IKEA has allowed us to grow our business, and you can make the wrong decisions by having a little bit too much capital to invest in the wrong places. So we've had those tensions this year as a result of the best thing we've done to date in a commercials.
Yeah, but you have. It reminds me, I spoke with Hyatt Denim founder on my podcast, and David Hyatt over in, don't know if you heard of him, over in Cardigan in Wales.
Huge fan.
Yeah.
Do one thing well, or one thing that's, yeah.
And they talk about that, you know, like their mission was like, for them, like you're talking about the black bag story, for them it was all about getting 800 people back their jobs. That was it. 800 people back their jobs who lost their jobs when everything got shipped over. But they got their jeans got photographed on the on someone in the royal family, one of the princesses. And all of a sudden, they came in the morning, and the sales went through the roof. And from the offset, that's amazing. But like, wow, how can we manufacture these? They were making them all in Wales. It's like, and then the tensions come, well, we need to get a bigger office. We need to get more staff. And the challenges of that, because you could think, well, I'm going to grow to that size now, but what if it all tails off in a few months because, it's not on another princess, so it's not on someone like that. So yeah, from the outside, everyone would like to perceive to be growing, but it's balancing that. And like you say, you got to manage it right, because, some of the decisions that you have to make there are crucial for the long term, rather than going all in or taking risks. But he's really inspiring what they're doing, and it reminds me similar of what you're doing as well. It's great. So one thing I want to just to come to cycle back, it just made me think when you're talking about your story when you were younger, about how it was kind of the community that cared for you. You lost your father young, your mum had to go and work, you didn't actually go into the system, but the community helped you. Where do you think we are at the moment in society with with the community? Because in many ways it feels like that, in some ways it feels like it's broken a lot more, and there isn't the capacity for people to have more time to look after neighbors or look after loved ones and stuff. And it feels like there's more reliance on the state and stuff. Where do you think we're at with that now? And I don't want to say what's the solution, because it's not, you're focusing on the bags, and that you're doing what you can. But it's interesting just to get your perspective, because you've been a youth worker, been in it. That's my little daughter in the background, just chiming in. She likes to speak on the podcast, pretty much everyone. So I'll leave it over to you now, Dave.
Yeah, I think where I see it is the system. The system is broken for sure. It's harder. Like one difference was in the area that I lived. There was very much one person out to work and one person at home, and so there was always people around. And I think busyness is actually a big part of the issue, where we live in a society that both people need to work. So it leaves community kind of absent for a high percentage of its time. So because there's nobody there, it's a little bit barren because everybody's out at work. So if somebody's got a problem, there's nobody there to help because everybody's just totally stretched trying to help themselves. So I think that's a big part in community. I also feel that there is a if I take the care space, which is what I'm really passionate about and probably a little bit more aware of, is that everything is dependent upon projects and funding and not relationships. So for instance, we're up for helping, but a young person could have, 100 social workers in their few years in care. They could have multiple moves and foster homes and relationships aren't the key of focus for it. It's just about keeping food on the table, keeping them warm, keeping them safe from the abuse and neglect. And then when we run support programs, we go to a charity and they put the government put funding in place to run a program for mentoring. But that's flawed in itself because it's got a time point, and what people need is significant adults and significant input. So the youth workers in my life were the ones who were significant, that were journeyed with. I went to my youth club at 11, and they're seeing me on the street when I'm 25, chatting away, and they've been significant. May not be inputting into my life in the same way, but they were significant, and they're still there. And I feel that that's the flaw, is we've made everything a program, and we've made taken the heart out of the humanity of the people. And so in the care system, those children are products. And when the products relationship doesn't matter. And I think that's the difference. When I look back, it was out of relationship. It was out of relationship that my mum had with her neighbors. It was out of relationship that we had with our families, and it was out of and relationship builds trust. Trust then allows that this is my child. I'm happy for you as my neighbor to take them on holidays for 2 weeks. in Travel England, because it was built out of relationship. And I think if that for me is, it would be a key. You know, if we were to start, how do we build safe, significant relationships in our society? I think it would change how things. And but I do believe it's broken. Yeah, and I believe the biggest part of that is everybody's so busy because cost of living, or what we expect our lives to have in stuff, requires everybody to be busy trying to have that stuff that we've no time to necessarily be significant and reach out.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge we face. I was reading something recently, like the average house price now is 10 times someone's wage. Where I was speaking to my dad, and when he was buying a house in the 70s, it was like 3 times the wage.
Mhm.
So wages have not increased anywhere near to the level of, don't match inflation, and that means that, like you say, two people need to go to work just to make ends meet.
Absolutely.
Um, and like you say, the busyness and just stressed and overworked and so many challenges. It's like they can't even get the head up just to, to feel like they can, um, yeah, to get a grip of things. But I think a lot of things are changing. I'd like to think from COVID, from particularly the first early lockdowns, like how many people's lives are unsettled, and realizing that, we're all on this kind of rat race to just keep going, but actually to what end? And you're seeing that it isn't making the people that are really further ahead happy. And it's like, what is making us, what is the really key things? And, it is relationships. It's, when you think about someone who maybe you lose in your life, you remember how they made you feel. You don't remember what car they had. You don't remember necessarily what they bought you, unless, they were generous and helped you in some ways. But you remember how they made you feel. I
Hmm.
can look back to my teachers in school. I can remember the mean ones. I'm not going to be thinking good stuff about them, the ones that, but the ones that were caring and kind. So
Hmm.
if we can start there with just being nicer to our neighbors and nicer to our friends and family in some way, and reaching out, then it's a good way to go. And I think the thing
Yeah,
that's helped.
that's so good, Rob. You know, that really is good. It's how you feel rather than what they have or who they are, how they left you feel, school teachers and so forth. But yeah, it's good.
And I've got a feeling many people will look back on how you've made them feel being a youth worker and stuff. Just that story you're saying about the ones that were, um, the ones that were real trouble, considered to be troublemakers, and you just want to, like, I'm going to sit down and play FIFA with them. I'm going to talk to them, get to know them, ask them how they feel. Like, I wonder how many people actually ask, how are you feeling? And not just, when we meet people and we say, how are you doing? It's so empty gesture. It's like, how are you? You're not really asking how they are. You just expect them to say, oh yeah, I'm fine. But actually, most of us aren't fine. Most of us just want someone to speak to, or to be able to feel like we can be vulnerable and express how we're feeling. Because I think that's part of the challenges as well. We're all meant to, like, be putting on this brave face, like we've all got it together, but none of us have got it together. We're all bloody struggling. We've all got the same challenges, same insecurities, well, not all same worries, but, insecurities, money issues, whatever. We're kind of, and I think the more of us can just be open and vulnerable and talk about that, you realize other people go, you know what, I feel like that as well. You know,
So
I'm glad you said that, because I've been bloody struggling with this thing as well. But anyway, I feel like I could go on about this for a long time. But what I'd like to, so if people are listening to this and thinking, you know what, this is an amazing company, how can I, one, either get involved? I understand that even if people don't need a bag, that they can donate a bag, can't they? And how can people find out more about you? And I know you've gone into depth with your story, but if they want to get involved in some way.
yeah, absolutely. So first of all, if they need a bag, and only when they need a bag, because we don't want to be creating an unhealthy environment by a lot of waste. So when they need a bag, choose Madlug as their bag brand. You know, that gives a bag. It also communicates by carrying the bag to a child and young person, as we're making more awareness of our brand as the brand that's for children in care. So it's an empowering brand to carry and say, we care for you, we see you, we love you. You know, the feeling of young people in the care system is that they often say that they're unseen because they're under 18 often, and nobody really knows. They don't carry t-shirts with "I'm a care kid." So there's an element where we're getting to, and everybody's professional that works with them and paid to work with them. So there's those kind of things. So we're empowering customers. So that's how you can get involved, is buy a bag and wear a bag. And that's the biggest part of the movement. If you don't need a bag and you want to fund the giving of bags and support children so that we can get to that 90,000 children, in care, that all having bags, and no child carries their life in a bin bag in the UK and Ireland, then donate a bag, gift a bag. Then there's a doing it once off, or there's doing a subscription model to that, where every month you can give 1, 2, 3, as many bags as you can afford or want to give, to be part of. You can also join the sign up and get our newsletter, and we're trying to do that kind of informative and build a movement rather than just sell on that all the time. But probably one of the most exciting things that's coming now, we're not there 100% yet, but we set up Madlug as a community interest company, locked asset. But we, as we've been growing, we feel that we needed to, and the giving has increased, we needed to create a foundation model. So we've created Madlug Foundation. We haven't fully launched it yet, but coming down the line is the foundation is going to run as a traditional charity. So one is that if you've bought a bag and you want to continue in the story of helping promote and do other things, there will be a charity to be involved in and to get that. And the foundation is going to be looking at giving the bags. So the confidence to a customer is if Madlug makes more profit than just the giving bags that we've committed to, then more profit money will be given to the charity to do other stuff. So that's where the foundation is. It's to really maximize the social impact and not detract from the bag story, because that's why we exist. But the foundation will be giving bags. The foundation is we want to use it as a real platform to raise awareness of the value, worth, dignity of children in care. So I see national like billboards not saying fund us £3 and we can help this with sad pictures, but empowering statements to the children and young people in our care system is, we see you, we love you, we believe in you. Just imagine if every billboard, every city, every town. So the foundation, we're wanting to go down that a little bit and be a real empowerment communicator of their value and worth, using the Madlug branding to do that. And also eventually we want to get into the space of empowering in employability and stuff. So there's places for businesses to get involved and giving apprenticeships and job testing and tasting kind of opportunities. And even something that I'm really passionate about now, we're really early days, is sometimes we see the only route out of unemployment or poverty is education. And I'm a big fan of education, but I believe one of the best tools is empowering entrepreneurs to do self-employment. And so I would love to explore a little bit of that through the foundation, where we can empower and maybe have more £500 turn into significant businesses helping more children in care, doing other things, built on black bin bag stories of children actually in the care system being empowered to make a difference. So that's the dream, that's the vision. We're not there yet. Hopefully I haven't confused by saying that stuff, because we're still trying to work the narrative and still trying to work out the clarity in that. But that's where we're going with it. 2 organizations, all about the value, worth, dignity of children in care.
Well, seeing how far you've come in the last 6 years, I've got no doubt, Dave, that you'll achieve all those goals at some point. It's been a real honor speaking to you. I feel really privileged that I can sit down and have these conversations with people, but then able to share it and inspire other people to go and do it. Because in a way, that's my own way of doing the butterfly effect in some ways of getting other people. And hopefully some of my listeners wouldn't have heard of you before and they'll be inspired by it. But absolute pleasure speaking to you today, Dave. And I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's been great, Rob, being on, and again, using your platform to invite people into this story, that no child should carry their life in a bin bag, because life goes inside.
There's my interview with Dave Linton, all wrapped up. A really inspiring guy doing amazing work. It's it looks like he's helped over 50,000 children in looked after care, and we'll be helping many more thousands. It's definitely not the end, it's just the beginning from by the sounds of it. I love just hearing his story and his journey, and the nuggets of wisdom that he had to share. I've got lots that I'll be taking from that one. So I'll include links to Madlug on the site, and I'll include to social media and how you can donate. I think for me personally, I don't need a bag at the moment. I made a point of that. Reminds me a bit of Patagonia, the way they are. They're not really there, after like rampant consumerism. They think like if you need a bag, get a bag. But I think for me to be able to donate £10 is to donate a bag is within most of our reaches. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. If you listen to it on Apple Podcasts, you can leave me a review. That would be amazing. If you listen to it on YouTube, you can subscribe and click the bell button so you'll get notifications for new interviews. And if you want to check out Positive News Magazine, you can receive a 20% discount if you use the code dogood20 at checkout. And you'll receive that off a yearly subscription. So there you go. I'm going to leave it all there for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, and have a good one.